How you think is the most important thing about you.
Well, here in session 6, our topic is removing the dross. We've already been talking about this. We know that the verse comes out of Proverbs chapter 25, verse 4. Remove the dross from the silver, and out comes material for the silversmith. So we're going to take a moment here. I've got a little chart for you guys to work through as a group. You can probably go ahead and stop the video right now, and as a group, walk through this together. The facilitator will walk you through it and help you understand. We're going to look at the literal idea of a silversmith and how they purify silver. But we also want to grab hold of the metaphor. Why did Solomon choose to use this verse? What was it that he knew about silversmith that made him use this as a metaphor or a parable? Remember, Jesus talked quite a bit in parables because he wanted to give the deeper meanings, the hidden meanings, as it says in the New Testament. I want to give you the hidden meanings of heaven, the hidden understanding of the kingdom of heaven. And he does it through parables. So this is one of those things. So let's just take a moment. The facilitator is going to walk you through this process. But we want to come out of this with a good picture as well as some good language for what this process means. That's right. It's another sequence. Lord, teach us your way so we can walk in your paths. Okay, now you know how the furnace works, okay? We've walked through the literal meaning of the furnace as well as the metaphor with the furnace. And hopefully it's even done some explaining of very possibly some events that have gone on in your life already or something that you're actually in right now. To understand that, well, maybe I'm in the fire right now, or maybe I'm getting banged on by the hammer, I'm getting thrown into the water. This process of fire, hammer, water, fire, hammer, water can be pretty difficult, but it's all in the process of the Lord through the Holy Spirit shaping you and molding you into your ultimate purpose and your ultimate design, which is tremendous. Let the Lord have His way with you, okay? But hey, let's move forward here. Remember, the furnace isn't just a program. It's not just an event that you're going to do and it's going to be nice. You're going to put the book on the shelf and stuff like that. You guys, the furnace is something, it's a way of living every single day. It's a lifestyle. It's a way of transforming the way that we think, so that we can navigate just as things are going along. Right now it may be kind of difficult, kind of tough because we don't know how to do it really well, but eventually your mind will be renewed and you'll know how to think about life. And rather than going up and down and crazy and life, and then life is really boring, I feel really close to God, I feel really far from God, I feel like I'm doing good, man, I stink, I'm not doing anything right. Instead of that up and down emotional, we begin to walk in a level plane. Isaiah talks about this when he says, we're going to raise the low places up and bring the high places down and create a level road. That's what he's talking about there. The ways of the Lord bring stability. The ways of the Lord are not filled with way up and way down. They are level. They are level and stable and safe and secure. So let's talk a little bit about the model of discipleship that the Lord uses. I'm going to be reading through this because this is some great stuff for us to catch, okay? Remember, it's not just information, you guys. This is truth. This is the ways of the Lord. So let's take a look at this. First of all, there are misunderstandings inside of our minds and hearts that have gotten there simply through the natural process of living life and interpreting our surroundings. Again, even if you got great parents, it still has to go through this mind when you were a small child, and you're just making sense the best way you can. And so even if you had a great upbringing, 18, 19, 20, 23 years, I guarantee there are still some dross inside of the way that we think. There are still ways that we think that just are not appropriate as we move forward in our life. So these misunderstandings will block us from being able to interpret correctly how God truly feels and thinks about us. We're thinking wrongly at that point. The second point here, we were created to respond to Him. I love that. We were created to respond to Him. I am not the initiator. I'm the responder in this relationship with the Lord. But if I've got these misunderstandings of how God feels about me and how He thinks about me, His emotions toward me, then I can very easily misinterpret, catch this, I can misinterpret how He thinks, and then I can judge Him based upon that misrepresentation. Man, that's no good. Has that ever happened to you before? Raise your hand if that's ever happened, where somebody has misjudged you and now they are treating you, or they are reacting to you according to their misjudgment. That's a very difficult place to be. But I do that to God if I'm not careful. I do that all the time. So, the only reason why we don't respond to Him rightly is simply because our misunderstandings. Number 3 here, God will, now this is a promise to you, God will remove those misunderstandings. He loves to do that. That's what He's in the business of doing. That's what the Holy Spirit gets up in the morning ready to do. That's why the Holy Spirit eats its Wheaties every day, because it wants to remove the misunderstandings on the face of the earth, so that the entire earth, not only the people, but all creation, can cry out, "Holy is the Lord." The only thing that keeps us from doing that is our misunderstandings. So the Holy Spirit is constantly at work saying, hey, let's take a look at this. Let me show you a new way of thinking. Let me give you a new perspective. But if we're not careful, we can resist that. So, number 4, God wants to purify us from these misunderstandings so we can see Him rightly and, in turn, respond to Him rightly. How we see Him is how we'll respond to Him. Okay? That's guys, that is a truth. That is a kingdom principle. How you see Him is how you will respond to Him. That's why I continue to say, how you think is the most important thing about you. Your thoughts will always lead to your actions and your results. So this process that we go into, that the Lord draws us into to purify us, what we're calling here in the program called the furnace, but this process can feel unnatural for us, because it's not what we're used to. It doesn't line up with the way we think it should work. This feeling can be very uncomfortable, and many times it can even confirm our misunderstandings about how God feels about us. Going through a difficult time, it feels uncomfortable, I feel like God's mad at me, and that just confirms that He is mad at me because I feel like that. And again, you want to be really careful with that idea here. But the process has to involve this challenging of your misunderstandings. And you guys, that's where willingness comes in. Are you willing to be challenged in the area of your misunderstandings? It's not a challenge where you think, dun, 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 I'm so strong, I can do anything. It's a challenge where all of a sudden you're going, wait a minute, is that true? Is that true? And I don't know. And this can make some people pretty unsettled, and even can make some people pretty angry when they are challenged in their misunderstandings, because they want to say, no, I know that this is right. This is what I've believed all along. This is what I was taught from a young age. So let's see here. The process has to involve the challenging of your misunderstanding. Therefore, it requires action more than just learning intellect. It requires more than just knowledge. You've got to get into action. This isn't just talking about silver becoming pure. It's actually entering into the process. And this can be difficult. It's great to talk about. It's a neat metaphor. You know, you take the thing and you stick it in the fire and it gets all hot and everything. You bring it out and you bang. Oh, that's a neat process. It's a neat idea to think about. Or when we talk about Star Wars and Yoda and Gandalf and Morpheus, oh, that's really neat, it's really neat. But are you willing to step in to that movie? Are you willing to engage in that journey of discipleship, that journey of becoming who you were created to be? That's the important part. The invitation during these uncomfortable times is to allow Him to remove the misunderstandings so we can see Him and His ways clearly. As we allow Him to do this, our eyes are open to the truth and we are able to simply respond to Him. You guys, that's huge. When we see Him rightly, we can respond to Him. But if we don't see Him rightly, we will try to initiate with Him and try to become the good person, try to become the strong Christian. But it's simply because we don't see Him rightly. Finally, As long as we have the misunderstandings about how God feels and thinks about us, we will not be able to naturally respond to Him. We'll try to initiate. It will always be a task to complete or a job that we never quite feel like we've accomplished. It's always just one more thing. Yeah, I did those, but there was still that one area. And if I could if I just need one more piece, then I'll get it. Guys, that will ruin your peace. It will ruin your joy. It will ruin your life of fulfillment in the kingdom of God. So we want to be sure to think of Him rightly. So, what the Lord does is He puts us through this process of purification. We're going to talk about another sequence here. These are simply pillars of understanding or truths that we want to embrace. If you can, now catch this, if you can embrace these 6 truths, then the path will make sense to you. But if you don't want to embrace these, if you think there's another path, it can be really difficult. Again, I've been teaching this for probably 15 years now. And there have been so many people that have been willing to embrace this path, to embrace these truths in their lives. And even for me personally, when I was able to embrace these, it made the path so much smoother. So first of all, as we dive into this, the first core belief for every young leader is that to lead is to serve. So what we need to do right at the outset is just make sure we're talking about the same thing. We have the same definitions. We're on the same page, as it were. So how do we want to define a leader? You know, John Maxwell talks about a leader is somebody that has influence. I really like that definition. Simply someone that has influence. Now, there may be better leaders than others, but is it possible? Do you think that is it possible for everyone and anyone to be a leader? It's a great conversation you guys may want to have during your discussion time. And how about this? Are there people that are actually born leaders? It's another great conversation for you to possibly have during your discussion here. But to lead is to serve. We're going to take a quick look at Matthew chapter 20, verse 20. All right, we're going to look at verse 20 all the way through verse 28. You guys have probably heard this story before, but this is where the mother of James and John comes to Jesus and is kind of in private, away from everybody else, but she's got her 2 boys with her, all right? And she goes, say, Jesus, how about, my 2 boys getting a special place with you? I don't know why I'm talking like this, okay? It probably doesn't fit that at all. But let's say that she's there and she's got her 2 boys with her and she is looking for special treatment for her sons. And she says, can they sit on your right and left? And Jesus says, can you drink the same cup that I'm going to drink? And of course they go, sure, yeah. Guys, they have no idea what he's talking about when he says, can you drink the cup? Remember, it's not too much longer when Jesus is in the garden and he has this prayer and he's weeping and he says, Lord, if there's any way this cup can pass over me, please let it happen, but not my will, but your will be done. The cup was the crucifixion. The cup was the sacrifice. The cup was the furnace that he was going through. These 2 guys had no idea that he was talking about that because they had in their mind to lead, to be in charge, meant that you were going to have a certain position of authority over people. And although that might be true, their idea of how they would use that position and authority was probably very corrupt and very worldly. Because as we get into the rest of this story, after Jesus says, well, they're going to be with me, but those seats are, it's not up to me to tell them where they're going to be sitting once we get up there. But they will drink the cup. But all of a sudden, we move into verse 25, where it talks about the disciples are over here to the side, and they're starting to get a little upset at these 2 boys. They're going, what makes him better than us, and blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden the disciples over here, they're getting frustrated because they see special treatment, or they're afraid of special treatment because they've got a wrong view of leadership. Again, they have the view that a leader is going to be someone that is going to have position and authority, and they're going to start pointing and telling people what to do. And I don't want to have to submit to your authority. I don't want you to have to tell me things to do. I only want to do what I want to do. So that's why they were getting upset. It's the same reason why those 2 disciples came with their mom And chances are pretty good mom didn't come up with that idea by herself. It was probably something around the family table. Hey mom, do you think you could talk to Jesus for us? Probably came up with that together. So all of a sudden it's because of their misunderstandings that it causes one pride over here, and on the other side it causes anger and causes a little bit of a rift between the disciples. So Jesus picks this up really quick, and he simply turns to them and says, okay, you guys, you're getting this all wrong. The model that you've been shown for so long about how to lead is whacked. It is not the way to lead in the kingdom of heaven. The way to lead in the kingdom of heaven is to be a servant, is to go to the low place. It's to rush to the low place to serve those that you're in charge of. So this is where we come up with this idea here. To lead is to serve. You probably have someone that you felt like in your life has been a great leader. Chances are very good you felt like they were a good leader because you felt like they cared about you, they noticed you, they helped you, they thought about you, they were concerned about you. Not just because they said, hey, do A, do B, do C, but they had a relationship with you. To lead is to serve. Next of all, second core belief for every young leader in training is simply that leadership involves struggles. Okay? Leadership involves struggles. Now again, the reason why I throw this in here is because I didn't think that. I didn't think that leadership involved struggle. I thought that once you got to the leadership position, you didn't have to worry about it anymore. Guys, again, I look back and I go, how was I picking up those ideas? But that's just how I saw it. I thought once I got to a place of authority, I wouldn't have those troubles anymore because I could just pass those struggles and difficulties to the people that were under me. And it doesn't necessarily work that way. To lead is to serve. Leadership involves struggle. To think any other way is simply a fantasy of how leadership will work, and it will make you angry. So, if to lead is to serve and leadership involves struggle, let's talk a little bit about this process. John Maxwell, you guys may have heard of his name before. If you are walking in and embracing this idea called personal development and leadership development, John Maxwell is a great name for you to know. He's written a ton of books. He's like probably the global Yoda right now on leadership training. He used to be a pastor. He's a believer. He loves the Lord. But let me show you really quick of kind of the steps of leadership that he has. The first step that he has in leadership is what he calls the position level of leadership. You have a leadership position, and you've been given that position. You have authority, but your authority is only by position. And people do what you tell them to do because you're the boss. You're the boss. You have the power over them. And you can scare them and manipulate them into doing things. This is a level of leadership, but the problem is that it's the very lowest level of leadership. It's the very lowest level of influence. You only have influence because of your position. Next of all, this second level is the level of permission. This is when you are now leading people that have given you permission to lead them. So they're no longer doing it just because you're the boss. They are doing it because they have given you permission to lead them. It's a big difference between how you would lead and how you would react and how you would respond to the people when they have given you permission right here. So it's a great second level. Next of all, as we continue to grow in our influence, remember, leadership is influence, so as we come up this staircase, our influence is getting bigger and bigger and bigger back to our concentric circles. Next of all, we move to production. And in this level, people are following you because of what you have been able to produce in your company or what you have been able to produce in your life. They look at you and they go, wow, you're successful. Wow, you know how to do that. Wow, you are an expert in that area. I want to follow you because of what you have produced in your life. So they see something in you and they want to be with you. They want to follow you in that. So this is the production level. And then this next one, this is when you really turn a corner. This is the people developer. And at this level, the reason why people are following you is because of something specifically you have done in their life. Here at the production level, they see something in you and they want to follow. At the people developer, you see something in them and you begin to nurture that and develop that and bring that seed of potential to life right in front of them. Caring for them and developing them and still holding them to production, still asking for permission, and still holding the position of their authority, their boss or whatever. It's not like this goes away. You still have that position. And then this final one, which is one that rarely people get to because it's just such an influential spot, but it's called the level of personhood. And this is just, I'm just going to follow you because of your name. Your name is like huge. And I'm just going to follow you. John Maxwell would be one of these. Mother Teresa would be one of these. Just the name everybody knows. Not just a few people know, but everybody knows this name. Across the globe. They hear that name and they just follow it. Billy Graham would be another example of this. And there are many, many others. But the idea is, as you go up this staircase, as you move from one to the next, there becomes a greater and greater measure of sacrifice that is required. And that's why people stop somewhere along the road. They don't just want to be the boss. They want people to like them. So they go here and all of a sudden people like them. It's kind of a relationship thing. It's going really good. But you're not getting very much done because everybody just likes each other and you don't want to offend anyone. You're not done in growing as a leader. You might be better than where you began, but you're not done yet. Next of all, the production. Now you're producing things and the company's working or the ministry is going and people are coming and buying and you're moving product and everything like that. That is wonderful. Production is happening. But until you step into this people developer, that's when we truly take on this idea of servanthood. We see the seeds of potential inside of people. And we begin to call those forth. We begin to take one or two under our wing and mentor them, train them and develop them, using the job or using the ministry or using the work at hand as the furnace to mold and to shape. So, again, this is kind of the movement. And because there are these sacrifices, that's where the struggle comes in. Leadership involves struggle. To think otherwise is just a fantasy. And let's see. So, number 3, core belief. Most struggles in leadership are there because of weaknesses and limitations in you rather than weaknesses and limitations in other people. Oh, this one was hard for me to learn. I just always wanted to blame other folks. If you would just do what I'm telling you to do, everything would be just fine. But they never quite did exactly what I told them to do. And so I would always just be kind of angry, kind of on edge. And I'd come out as an angry leader and I would bark and I would begin to raise my voice. Have you ever had a leader that has raised their voice to try to get you to do things? I'm sure you've never done that personally, but raise your hand if you've had a leader that has done that to you. As a coach for 15 years, I kind of learned that style of leadership. Scream and yell, to get people to do things. Some way that's going to get them to do it more. But screaming and yelling, raising your voice, volume, is simply an indication of weak leadership, because you have to rely on that manipulation and that forcing of people to do things. But most struggles in leadership are a result of having to lead people that you don't want to serve. I love this. You get that? To lead is to serve. Leadership involves struggle, and most of the struggles are because you're having to lead people that you don't want to serve. And that can be so hard. Why should I have to serve them? They don't ever do anything. There's always some kind of reason why I feel like I shouldn't have to serve them. I should be okay just barking at them. They need to do what I tell them to do. Once they do that, then I will serve them. Once they do X, Y, and Z, then I will do my part on this. But remember, how you see them is how you will treat them. Your thoughts lead to your results. Tough bar, as we've talked about. The way you think is the most important thing about you. Yeah, so raising your voice and also blaming them for the struggles and so forth, those are just indications of an immature leader. So this mindset is void of the humility, and it can't ever truly be trusted to care for the people because you're still blaming the people. Guys, it's going to be really tough for you to care for the people if you're blaming the people. So we have to learn how to think rightly on this. Someone that will just do the work. The best you can hope in this situation is that you're just a hireling. The boss walks in the door, you do the job because the boss is in the door. The boss walks out of the door, you stop doing the job. You know? Or the boss is away, or there's nobody looking. I can get away with things. These are all indicators of just weak, immature leadership. Doesn't mean you're not a leader. It's just you're not growing yet, or you're not where you want to be just yet. This attitude is grounded in a self-centeredness. You know, I don't want to have to serve. I just want to lead. I want people to do what I tell them to do. And that's great. Welcome to the boss level. I want them to do what I'm telling them to do, and I want them to do it because I told them. Have you heard that one before? You know, from a teacher or maybe a parent or something like that. You know, how come I have to do this? You have to do it because I told you that you have to do it. You guys, once again, if that's the only reason that you have for people to follow you, then it's just a shallow reason. It's just difficult. Now, eventually, there are times as a leader, and even when you're a people developer, you do it because I told you to do it. There are times where it's appropriate to say that. But if that's the only thing we keep saying, and I remember learning this as a teacher when I was teaching high school, you know, telling students, hey, I want you to do this. How come I have to do that? Because I told you to. Man, I was full on right here. I was just leading from position and had not yet begun to move up that ladder. So again, this mindset is all focused on self-centeredness that will always sacrifice the people to obtain the leader's own personal agenda. That's what it means when you're saying, do it because I told you to do it. I don't care if you have a problem with it. I don't care if it's hard. I don't care about this. I don't care about you. All I care is that you do what I am telling you to do. Again, that's not always wrong, okay? But there can be many times where it's just inappropriate, and it's coming out of a lack of relationship or a limited ability to lead, where we try to force. Wherever we are weak in our leadership, chances are really good we'll slip into a place of forcing things. And we'll get into that a little bit later on. But this is always the test on the first level. How often do you say these things? How often do you feel that you should get to choose who you serve? You know? How often, if you were going to be a leader, would you want to go, okay, I'll get this one and this one and this one, and you want to choose who that's going to be? How often have you said, as a leader, this isn't fair? Or how often have you said, do it because I told you to do it? Once again, all of these are just coming out of the limitations and the issues that we have as leaders. And the Lord will put us into positions as a leader where we have influence. Okay, it doesn't necessarily have to be this leadership position, I'm now the president of something. It can just be in a position where we have influence over someone. He'll put us in that circumstance where we want to lead, but we don't want to serve. We want to have influence on a person, and we want to have influence on their decisions, but we don't want to serve. Here's another great example of this, all right? Now, this might get a little close. Little brothers and little sisters, you know? Or people that annoy us. Not that all little brothers and sisters annoy us, but just any place where someone annoys us. We just want them to stop because we told them, and we want to force them. It can be very difficult to lead if we don't come first with a heart of servanthood. Okay, so core belief number 4. Core belief number 4 is that God uses these struggles that we go through, these struggles that we experience, the internal tension that's inside of us when we want to lead but we don't want to serve. He uses that tension to reveal something about us, not just something about the people we're trying to lead. Again, I always wanted to blame them. If you would just do what I'm telling you to do, everything would go smooth. But you're not doing it, so everything's crazy. It's your fault. It's your fault. Guys, that is an inappropriate way of thinking. And many times, that's probably not why the situation has come to the place where it is. It's because of a limitation that's inside of me that causes me to begin to blame and begin to force things on others. See, that's why it's so important to have experiences in leadership, experiences in places of authority, because it brings up stuff in me. Again, for so long as a young leader, I would get a position of authority because I had talent, I had skills, I had ability to talk. A lot of those things that we would say, well, he's just a born leader. I had some of that personality, and I saw it modeled as I grew up. But unfortunately, I didn't have some of the foundation of character. So I lived this for a long time. I would use my skills to get a position, but I didn't even know that stuff existed. I stayed right here and I go, hey, I'm a leader, kind of call myself a leader and think of myself as a leader. But I was really using the people to gain and to grab hold of my own agenda. But God will use these struggles. He'll use these struggles to show you what's going on inside of you. So what if the struggles were a result of a weakness in me as a leader rather than a weakness in the people? What if their weakness was simply revealing my weakness? Wait a minute, no, I don't want to be. I want it to be all them. Guys, that's just not how it works. It's just not how the Lord works with us. That is not how His ways are. And if we want to walk in His paths, we need to understand His ways. So how would you respond to weakness in yourself? So how you respond to weakness in yourself will tell you something about how you will respond to weakness in others. That's a huge thing right there. I remember I've told you in earlier sessions that I hated weakness inside of myself. In fact, I hated weakness so much I never would raise my hand and ask a question because I thought that meant that I was weak. So I never asked questions. How I treat myself in my own weakness will be how I treat others. It's not vice versa. You will always be confronted with these negative self-thoughts. Oh, is that me? Is that me? And you can't just keep blaming it on other people. You'll always be assaulted by these inner voices that'll be accusing you. The question is not, how do I get away from the voices? The question is, do I have the other inner voices? Do I have that inner force inside of me called identity that will be able to combat those voices when they come? If you're not careful, these negative thoughts can dictate your feelings and trap you into feeling emotionally driven. Decisions, remember we talked about this. Decisions begin to be based upon emotion. These people are making me mad, so I'm going to do this. This person makes me frustrated, so I'm going to do this. This can make for a very dramatic leader that you just don't really ever know where they're going to be coming from. Have you had a leader like that before? Raise your hand if you've had a leader like that, where you're just kind of going, or maybe even a parent. Don't raise your hand on that one though. Where you have a parent or a teacher or someone, you're just kind of going, well, how are they today? You're kind of walking into the room, kind of trying to get a feel for how they're doing. Some days it's like, man, don't make a sound because they are lit up. Other days, everything's fine. It just makes for a dramatic leader when we're moved by our feelings, and we're mainly moved by our feelings because we are blaming others for the struggle. So this is a very important lesson to learn in your own personal development. Catch here in bold, this is important. Most of your life will be spent feeling weak. And most of the stress in your life is going to be caused from you trying to avoid your weakness. So what we need to do is simply learn how to live in weakness, how to be able to embrace weakness. It's called humility. It's called, yes, there's some issues that I'm still working through. There's some difficulties I'm trying to overcome. The classic, it's not you, it's me type of thing. If we're not careful, we'll try to become this super strong leader. But man, that can easily slip into being a mean leader, trying to drive your people. Again, how you see them is how you'll treat them. So this is, you may be experiencing it already in the in what you're doing, in the work that you have your hands on right now. that there are some areas where the people that you are trying to lead are not doing necessarily what you want them to do. How are you responding to that? Is there frustration coming up? Is there a little bit of anger coming up? You're starting to put people in boxes, starting to say, well, I'm going to have to force these people to do things. Is your voice beginning to raise? If it is, don't freak out. All of these are simply, like we're saying here, just areas that we need to work on, areas where we need to grow. Core belief number 5, again, change, as we've been talking about so much throughout. Change isn't just from adding things on. There needs to be an exchange of information. This is what I used to think. This is the new thought I'm going to take on, and I'm going to put the other one down, just like the tennis balls that we talked about. True change can only come when something is exchanged, when something old is released so that something new can be grasped hold of. Actually, to grow in maturity is to understand which thoughts I need to lay down and which other thoughts I need to pick up. And again, left to myself, I'm not going to know that. So there needs to be somebody in my life, a mentor or a coach or somebody that can help me navigate through these thought conflicts that come up along my journey of learning how to be a leader and going through this process of personal development. Because without that, you won't be able to identify, oh, this is a good thought, this is a bad thought. We'll think that every single thought is good because we're thinking it. All right? That's all I need inside of my head. It's in my head, therefore it must be right. Because it's in my head, and then over here I'm going to have a certain reaction or a certain action in my life that's going to confirm that what I thought was true. That person doesn't like me. I think that. And then all of a sudden they walk by and they say hi to me, you know? And I notice something weird. Maybe I think that they roll their eyes or something like that. And all of a sudden I have confirmed that what I thought about that person was true all along. We can do it so quickly. We misrepresent people and then we judge them based upon our misrepresentation, as opposed to learning what thoughts need to come out so that other thoughts can come in. It's in this struggle that you begin to find your true convictions and your values. Your words and your actions as a leader will reveal what you call truth. To simply continue to add new thoughts into your life will eventually lead to something we call indifference. There'll be so many conflicting ideas that you'll be able to see every point. Sure, well, I see what you're saying, so I can't argue with that. Oh, well, I understand that because, and I can't argue with that. And there's never any true conviction or conclusion because we haven't exchanged our thoughts. We haven't transacted. And then finally, core belief number 6 is simply the only way to lead in the midst of all of this struggle that's going on is simply to become a servant leader. It's to become like Christ, to become a person that is willing to serve in the place of leadership, a person that is willing to think of others rather than just think of themselves. So again, it's not just because you're hearing this, you go, I'm going to walk out of here and I'm going to be a leader at that level. It's like, it's not going to happen. You can't avoid the journey. You can't avoid the preparation. You're going to have to go through it. The only question here is, will you recognize it when you're going through it, or will you recognize the struggle and interpret the struggle and difficulty as being their fault? It's not go out and make sure there is no difficulty so you can say, hey, I'm good. You go out and when difficulty comes, you embrace it and go, oh, there's probably something here that I need to be learning. First thing I'm going to do is check my own heart, rather than point my finger at somebody else. So these are the 6 core beliefs for a young leader in training. And I strongly encourage you as best you can to try to get your arms around this in an embrace and say, I am willing to take this on. I'm willing to begin to try to think this way. Even if some of you are sitting there going, I'm not going to do that. You know, man, I just don't know if I'm willing to do that right now because of some struggle or some pain or some hurt in my life. I don't know if I'm willing to do that. Then I'll ask you this question. Would you be willing to be willing? Think about that for a moment. Would you be willing to be willing? Even if you're sitting there right now saying, no, I'm not going to do it. Would you be willing to think about it? Because if you'd be willing to think about it, you're on your way. That's the first step. Great job. Most people are clueless. Other people will hear about it, but they reject it. But that doesn't have to be you. Just to be willing is a wonderful first step. So I encourage you guys in your conversation time to dig into some of this stuff, some of your own personal experiences, some of your personal struggles that you're going through. That's probably why your facilitator in every meeting is going, what kind of struggles are you having right now? Are you needing help navigating any of these? If you're one of the people in this group right now that still to this time, even though you're finishing up session 6, you still have never admitted a struggle that you're going through, then don't be thinking that you're growing just because you're hearing some information. You need to begin sharing your struggles. Learn how to navigate through. Be careful of that trap. Oh, I'll just figure it out later. Be careful of that trap. Hey, I hope you've enjoyed session 6 on removing the dross. In session 7, we're going to be diving into Scripture. I'm excited about this. We're getting into your memory verse now as we get into Romans chapter 11 and chapter 12. We'll see you in session 7.
How you think is the most important thing about you.